This is Rusty Cage by Soundgarden. It's a raging beast of a song built on shifting time signatures and Chris Cornell's voracious howl. This is the sound of Seattle in 1991, loud, angry, and brilliantly complex. And this is also Rusty Cage. So how did the man in black, a titan of country music, take a grunge masterpiece that seemed unbreakable, tear it down to the studs, and rebuild it as a haunting ballad that would shock the world, and even the man who wrote it? This is the story of how Johnny Cash found a folk song hiding in a grunge staple and created one of the gutsiest and most powerful cover songs in music history. To really get the scale of this transformation, you have to understand the original. The year is 1991. Soundgarden, along with bands like Nirvana and Pearl Jam, is on the front lines of a musical earthquake shaking up rock and roll. Their album Bad Motor Finger was a landmark record, and on it was a track that perfectly captured the feeling of the era, Rusty Cage. The song was born from that classic rock and roll feeling of being trapped. The writer Chris Cornell said he came up with the lyrics in his head while staring out the window of a tour van, feeling pent up on a grueling European tour. He wanted to create a sound he'd never heard before, what he called a hillbilly Black Sabbath crossover, inspired by the dark, story-driven world of Tom Waits. And the music itself, it was a fortress. Guitarist Kim Thile created a riff that felt totally alien. He tuned down his low E string all the way down to a B, making it so loose it could barely hold a note. The real beast of the song is the rhythm. The song kicks off in a blistering 4/4 time, but by the end it breaks down into a haymaker swing of alternating time signatures that keeps you completely off balance. It's rhythmic chaos that perfectly matches the panic in the lyrics. Topped with Chris Cornell's soaring multi-octave scream, Rusty Cage wasn't just a song, it was a technical marvel. It was aggressive, complicated, and seemed welded to its grunge identity. For all intents and purposes, it was unbreakable. 5 years later, an unlikely duo was in the middle of changing music history. Johnny Cash, the legendary Man in Black, was having a massive late career comeback, all guided by the visionary producer Rick Rubin. Rubin's whole approach for their American recording series was a radical strip away of the slick Nashville production and basically having Cash cover songs for modern artists, no matter what the genre was. Rubin believed a great song was a great song, and the lyrics were everything. So he brought the idea to Johnny Cash, an idea that on paper sounded completely insane. He played him Soundgarden's Rusty Cage. Cash's reaction was pretty much what you'd expect. He was, by his own account, horrified in an interview with Larry King.
One part of the album we've been showing, Unchained, is Rusty Cage. A video from it. Tell me about that song.
That's a Soundgarden song, written by Chris Cornell of Soundgarden, and my producer, Rick Rubin, who's had been a rap and heavy metal producer. You know, of course, he was familiar with all that stuff, and he heard a few songs in it that he thought might be interpreted in another way that I could do. And he played me a song called Rusty Cage. And I said, no way. And, you know, it's heavy metal, and I mean, it just wasn't me. I said, no, I can't do that song. And he said, well, what if we come up with an arrangement that's comfortable? And I said, well, that's what it's all about, you know. But I got to feel it from here and here.
But Rubin was convinced. He heard something else hiding behind the wall of sound. He even went to Chris Cornell and asked him to work up an acoustic arrangement for Cash. Cornell was just skeptical, though. He later admitted, I thought it was a stupid idea. I just didn't hear it. It didn't make any sense to me sonically. After trying for a couple hours and getting nowhere, Cornell said no. The guy who wrote it didn't think it could be done. The legend who was supposed to sing it didn't think it could be done either. But Rick Rubin had a vision. He and his team did one thing that seemed impossible. They broke the unbreakable song. They tossed out the chaotic rhythms and the detuned guitars, the screams. They stripped it down to its absolute core, leaving only the raw, desperate poetry of Cornell's lyrics. They were looking for the story. Once Rusty Cage was broken down to its raw elements, Cash and Rubin started to rebuild it piece by piece with a totally new soul.
So they did. They worked out with Tom and all of the musicians an arrangement that I just love. And the lyrics then, I read the lyrics, which I couldn't understand, and it's a fabulous song.
First, the music. The frantic, complicated guitar riff was swapped for a steady, chugging acoustic rhythm. It's not the sound of panic, it's the sound of a train rolling down the tracks on a relentless, weary journey. The wild time signatures were also gone, replaced with a grounded, gothic country feel that was pure Johnny Cash. the most profound change came from the voice. Chris Cornell delivered the lyrics with the fire and rage of a young man trying to break out of a cage. His voice climbs, soars, and then attacks. Johnny Cash does the exact opposite. He doesn't scream, he doesn't rage, he speaks with the bone-deep gravity of a life lived. When Cash, at 64 years old, sings, "I'm gonna break my rusty cage and run," it isn't a threat shouted at the world, it's a statement of fact. It's a tired declaration from a man who's known cages his whole life, both real and metaphorical, and is getting ready for one last inevitable escape.
What's it mean?
Well, that can be interpreted a lot of ways.
How do you interpret?
It's a beat vision of a guy out there looking for a lost love, or maybe himself. And the hell he goes through looking.
Can you relate to that? Big time.
Yeah.
I'm gonna break my rusty cage and run.
The song is no longer about desire for freedom, it's about the weight of it. The Southern Gothic story that Cornell had imagined was now front and center, transforming the song into a dark American folktale. It's an incredible reinvention and completely changes the emotional core of the song.
Heart of fire, I'm burning diesel, burning dinosaur bones.
It makes you wonder, what other cover songs do you think totally transformed the original? Let me know in the comments and maybe I can do a story on it. When Johnny Cash's version was released for his 1996 album Unchained, the world was stunned. The album would go on to win a Grammy for Best Country Album, and Cash's version of Rusty Cage earned him a Grammy nomination for Best Male Country Vocal Performance. But the ultimate seal of approval came from the man who wrote it. After hearing what Cash and Rubin created, Chris Cornell's skepticism completely vanished.
Do you like Johnny Cash's cover? I mean, I love his cover of Rusty Cage. When you first heard that, did you like that?
Yeah, I did.
You did?
It baffled me a little, the concept, but I learned a lot, which was you can, take any song and kind of do whatever you want with it, and if it's a good song, it'll work out. He just took Rusty Cage, a Soundgarden song, which was this crazy against the wall riff, and then they just rearranged it so it went dum 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 dum, and then he sang Rusty Cage over it. It was Johnny Cash. It was great.
And then you're like, he went dum 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 dum. It's like,
He
wow,
did.
which is really a stretch for Johnny Cash.
Yeah,
that whole thing.
Johnny
He
Cash
did his
song.
Johnny Cash thing. But he turned me on to the song from Soundgarden. Like, I heard Johnny Cash's first.
Oh, really?
And then he got into Soundgarden.
Really?
Yeah. Yes.
That's an odd thing.
I'm very
Don't you
anal
think?
about rock. I listen to Sabbath and Kiss,
Anal
and I
about
feel
everything.
disloyal if I like anything else.
Really?
I'm a complete
Kiss.
creep.
In one of the most telling stories, Cornell revealed the true power of Cash's version. He said that for years no one had ever really mentioned his lyrics for Rusty Cage. But after Cash's cover came out, his answering machine was filled with messages from people complimenting the songwriting. He joked, "When our version came out, I didn't get one message. It took the voice of a legend, stripped of all that noise, for people to truly hear the poetry he had written years earlier in the back of that van." Cornell was so honored, he started dedicating Soundgarden's live performances of Rusty Cage to Johnny Cash. The story of Rusty Cage is more than just a great cover. It proves that a truly great song has nothing to do with genre, style, or generation. Johnny Cash didn't just sing Rusty Cage, he crawled inside it and unlocked a different truth that was buried deep in its bones. He proved that a country ballad's DNA could live inside a grunge anthem. The mutual respect between these two icons became a thread that connected them for the rest of their lives. Years later, long after Cash had passed, Cornell was invited to take part in the album Johnny Cash Forever Words, where modern artists set Cash's unreleased poems to music. In what would become one of his final recordings, Cornell took two of Cash's poems about a fractured relationship and wove them into a single haunting song he titled "You Never Knew My Mind."
Then you saw the changes painfully.
It was a final poignant tribute. The man whose lyrics were given a new life by Johnny Cash returned the favor, giving voice to the man in black one last time. It proves that a great song isn't defined by how it sounds, but by the truth it tells. And sometimes it takes another legend to break that song apart, just to help us all hear the truth in a whole new way. That brings us to the end of today's video, guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again on Rock and Roll True Stories 2. Take care.